Hello and welcome to Thinkpodpowered by the FII Institute. For more than 30 years, I led Sky News' coverage of global events, holding to account the politicians and change makers shaping the world of today. In this series, filmed at the 6th Future Investment Initiative in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, I've got the opportunity to question those shaping the future. At this inflection point in our history, how can we ensure that the future is one of prosperity and opportunity for all? This episode, we meet Jeffrey Smith, an American venture capitalist. Based in Boston, Jeffrey is helping homegrown companies achieve success in rapidly expanding Asian markets.
As an investor, you love all your children, but you love some of them just a little bit more.
In the Asian century, for companies that can seize on emerging technology trends, the possibilities are limitless. Thank you very much indeed for joining us on ThinkPod. I'd like to ask everyone I'm talking to start by introducing themselves.
Absolutely. It's a pleasure to meet you. I really appreciate the opportunity to be with you here this morning. I'm Jeffrey Smith. I'm a general partner in a Tokyo-based VC firm, SIP. We are based in Tokyo, but we have co-headquarters in New York, Boston, and we have quite a significant presence in Riyadh here as well, with a venture partner and a good setup for market entry here in the kingdom as well.
And why are you based in Tokyo?
Largely as an effort by some of the largest Japanese corporations to expand the independent venture community. It's actually reasonably immature. There are significant corporate venture capital groups in Tokyo, in Japan in general, but a relatively limited international VC environment. So we've been funded mostly by Japanese corporates. Our LPs are mostly Japanese enterprises, with a mandate to invest in North America, in Europe, in MENA, to bring the most advanced technology and appropriate technology into Japan, and vis-a-vis Japan, into the rest of Asia.
And you, yourself personally, you're what they call a serial entrepreneur and investor, is that?
That's probably the most accurate. I'm not sure that boxes always fit, and when you get to be my age, these things take a moment to explain. So, it's been a long career, but mostly, yes, I've been a CEO of 7 very IP-intensive engineering companies, both public and private, and primary investor in those companies, and an entrepreneur throughout 17 years in Asia, another 10 years in Italy, and most recently back in States, and always working in Saudi throughout that entire period.
And in terms of the companies that you've built and moved on from, mainly, you say engineering, but mainly high tech as well?
Very IP-intensive, intellectual property-intensive engineering, software companies, yes, always high tech.
And just run through some of them.
Yeah, absolutely. For instance, a company called KWI was originally Croft Waters, one of the largest water technology companies in the world, based out of Kuala Lumpur in Klagenfurt, Austria. Operations in 60 countries. Mostly what we've done is invest in these companies, taken on the C-suite roles, made major changes, hopefully improvements in their operations, and then sold them on. So it's sort of a serial activity.
And would you identify them in any particular sectors?
No, that's ranged from water and environmental engineering to petroleum. I spent my first 12 years based in Singapore, here in the kingdom quite often, working in petroleum. I built a petroleum engineering company out of Singapore and Hong Kong. We've worked in the defense sector in collaboration with the kingdom as well, out of the US. We've worked pretty extensively in enterprise software. We built the 3rd largest software company in Italy in the 1990s. So no, it's been quite a diverse set of technologies.
And is your focus now, obviously you're Asia-based, on companies in Asia?
No, it's actually quite different, although that's a place we're heading in our subsequent funds as we speak. We invest mostly in North America with an allocation to Europe and MENA for companies that have extraordinarily strong opportunities in Japan. And we bring those companies, we have a market entry team, bring those companies that we invest in into Japan, and we're doing the same here. We have 2 of our companies entering the Saudi market as we speak, and that's something we're going to be building on extensively.
Japan is, I think the rest of the world views it as being very high tech. very much ahead in robotics, but you're saying needs to bring in enterprise from outside.
Every major US tech company, their second market is Japan. It's difficult, it's challenging, there are language issues, there are structural issues.
Not China.
No, absolutely not. It's much more difficult for most consumer goods, Apple, Tesla, it's China. When you get to higher tech applications, Japan is almost everybody's second market. Very collaborative environments, very well suited, great intellectual property protection, exceptionally smart people, good universities. So it's a really tight and important match between US technology and Japan, and vice versa, obviously. A good example, you mentioned robotics. The robotics companies in Japan have almost a 50% market share worldwide. We have invested in two major software companies working in the robotics sector. Their largest market by far is Japan. They're working with every one of the major Japanese to upgrade and to enhance their software environments. So there, is a good example of complementary technologies.
And people often talk about Japan as having demographic problems, and obviously people talk about the 2 decades of stagnation and all the rest of it. You think that's a misconception?
No. No, I don't. And that's why we exist, to be honest. This is an effort to help jumpstart technological innovation in some of the areas where Japan has been a little bit slower over the last 2 decades. And the population decline is simply empirical. The population is declining as we speak. Immigration is limited. So in this way, there needs to be a major effort by the large corporations to export again in a more meaningful way. And we're part of upping that technological curve so that that's a successful effort.
But it's investor rich and therefore can go.
Absolutely. There are billions of dollars literally on the Japanese corporate balance sheets to invest in venture, but it's still largely an inward focused activity. Although we do see Japanese venture here in MENA, we see it in Europe, and more extensively we see it in the States.
Do you agree with those who talk about an Asian century, this being an Asian century in the way that the last one was the American century?
I think it's honestly too simplistic. I think this is going to be again, predicting anything given the global climate at the moment is somewhat of a fool's errand. But things are changing so quickly, they're so fluid at this very moment. Geopolitical stresses and pressures, obviously, literally, we have a full-scale ground war going on that no one would have predicted 2 years ago. But I think you're going to see more of a multipolar world rather than an Asian century. And this is where I think a country like Saudi is so well positioned to take advantage of both of those trends. Obviously, there's been a long history of involvement with the West and with America in particular. And now there's a deepening relationship with Japan. There's a deepening relationship with China. I think Saudi's in an excellent position to take advantage of both of those trends before.
Let's talk a little bit about new technologies,
Please.
the technologies you're investing in. You've got a company, SIP,
Yes.
and also Croquet as well. You're involved with both AR, augmented reality, and virtual reality, VR. Do you think both of them have a future?
I have a rather strong opinion that AR is the future and that VR is a more limited technology as we move forward. I'll give you just a quick example. We've also invested in a company called Tilt 5. It's the world's first AR gaming platform. If you think of Star Wars chess, this is this plus. It's just an incredible experience. It's there now, it's shipping, it exists. It's the first sort of, again, AR gaming environment. I have children, they're grown at the moment, but I've been through this, and as a parent, I watch people play with this AR environment. Their heads are up, they're interacting with each other around a table, they're having this massively interesting augmented experience. They're playing Catan in a virtual environment, but they're collaborating as humans. They're in a real world with an augmented sort of sense of reality, with a new type of conversation. This is where I believe the future is, in the metaverse, in augmented reality.
So it's more human in a sense.
It's completely human. It enhances the interaction. It's a tabletop game people play with their family, with their friends, in a deeply interactive way. And I see that extending to all of our communication. I see AR honestly as the future of communication. As how we communicate as humans with each other. And that's obviously a slightly different view than a VR-driven sort of metaverse that's insular and mostly driven by non-human interactions.
Do you think that because Mark Zuckerberg is such a dominant person that we're perhaps little bit bamboozled, concentrating a bit too much on the metaverse, and actually things are really happening in AR?
Well, actually, I think the metaverse is not yet defined. It's a concept with a number of different vectors and routes and approaches to the world. Look, Meta has a particular view, and I would never bet against a company that's as competent and with such smart people and unlimited resources. I'm sure they'll create a business that's rich and important for them. But we have a slightly different view of where the metaverse will end up. And I'm not sure these won't exist in parallel, which is an enhanced reality for all of us, continuing as a human communication.
You talked about games and entertainment. I mean,
games, entertainment, but also business, commerce. If we think of Minority Report, the sort of famous, exactly. I think that gives you a vision, perhaps, in our view, more of what's going to emerge as the dominant use of the metaverse is an enhanced reality that makes our lives richer and more complex, but still remains human-centric.
You're also involved with what people call Industry 4.0.
Very much so, yes.
The Internet of Things, smart manufacturing. What's that?
We see where our primary involvement is in this space, and we are actually focusing increasingly on climate tech, on what we call sustainability at scale, which is sort of deep tech, hard tech solutions to decarbonize the world's major emitting industries, manufacturing, construction, transportation, et cetera. And that's where we see the Industry 4.0 is from that perspective. We see automation as largely a continuum. If you think of two axes, one is complexity of environment, and the other perhaps is the ability to control that environment. You start on the one end with robo-taxis, urban delivery, massive complexity, no ability to control. We see that as a longer term sort of solution in many ways. As we move forward, we've invested in a company called Kodiak, which is large scale, long distance trucking without a driver, automated trucking. Autonomous trucking. We see this as an enormous opportunity. And it's both an opportunity to disrupt a major industry that hasn't changed, honestly.
But that would be what, hub to hub? Effectively.
Hub to hub, exactly, without the urban complexity. Yeah. So reduced complexity of environment and some ability to control that environment. Already they're doing thousands of deliveries. This is here now. You'll see by the end of 24 in the US, significant numbers of trucks operating without drivers. I've spent 15, 20 hours in these trucks myself out on the 101 in San Mateo with 80,000 kilos of load in the back. It's boring after 5 minutes. It's that good. It's just remarkably effective. It's safer than drivered trucks. More importantly, first it's the possibility it's 40% cheaper to operate per kilometer these trucks. Which is obviously the opportunity to disrupt $1 trillion industry. Perhaps more importantly, they use 30% less fuel, whatever that fuel may be. And even more importantly, they operate 23 hours a day, which means half the trucks, which means less lithium, less boron, less stainless steel, less rubber left over in landfills. So just remarkable impact.
And what about 3D printing? I mean, you've got a business that's printing metal.
We do, and it's, again, as an investor, you love all your children, but you love some of them just a little bit more. And this company, Surratt, near Boston, is one that we're just exceptionally enthusiastic about. On the same thesis as Kodiak, exceptional economic disruption, but huge environmental impact and sustainability impact at the same time, which is exactly what we're looking for as investors. There's always been in 3D printing a trade-off between speed and precision. You can either print things that are extremely precise, like the nacelle of a rocket, but you can print one of them in 3 weeks, or you can print relatively crude parts quickly. They've cracked the sort of equation of how to print auto parts for existence, which are their first, for instance, which is their first market, at extreme speeds and extreme precision. They're 60% less energy to print an auto part than the traditional casting and machining. They're 35 to 40% cheaper than that. So again, economic disruption. This is an industry. It's where I came from as my background, machining metal. It's an industry that hasn't changed a bit in 125 years. It's exactly the same as it always was. And this is an opportunity not only to radically disrupt it from a monetary standpoint, but cut down its horrible greenhouse gas emission problems in a major way. Again, secondary effects, super important. These things need to be looked at in depth when we talk about impact or sustainability. The biggest part may be that these plants are relatively small to set up. They can be set up next to the end users, which cuts down on transport cost, on all of the greenhouse gas emissions that go along with ship transport, truck transport. You're printing these parts right next to the consumer.
And what's the raw material?
It's any type of metal. They print presently titanium, stainless, different grades of stainless. They can print polymers. There's almost no limitation. These are the world's largest commercial lasers. Lasers are manufactured by Lockheed Martin. The team came out of Lawrence Livermore, which is the Department of Energy's main research lab in the US. Today, people print parts largely in a line. The laser moves along the line and continues across the air. It's just dramatically 2 orders of magnitude faster and equally precise.
So do you think that's the future of engineering, really,
Absolutely.
rather than metal batteries?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, this is something, again, I feel passionate about, having grown up I started cutting metal in my dad's shop when I was 12. I feel really passionate that this is a better way to do it. These are difficult, hot, dangerous jobs that are being replaced. It's a net improvement on just a broad array of areas.
So if we take the array of technologies and assume you have a very good track record that you're right, that this is the direction in which society is going, what are the implications, do you think?
I have a rather strong view that certainly we may solve or help to solve labor shortages. We may help to improve the life quality of an aging society. And these are obviously beneficial. But the real issue that we're interested in from a societal standpoint is climate, and climate. I mean, these are our top 3 priorities, and they're true of every investment that we make. These industries are going to exist for the next 10 to 20 years. Whether it's a good idea, whether it's not a good idea, you're going to make auto parts. You're going to transport those auto parts. You're going to have data centers using massive amounts of electricity, and we have solutions addressing that problem as well. So our goal in life, as we see it, is to use economic factors to drive adoption, but to make these essential industries that are going to exist dramatically less problematic. And so from that climate perspective, we feel we're doing a small part, but perhaps a critical part of decarbonizing and meeting net zero goals.
Final question. You shape the world of technology and to some extent we've touched on politics during this discussion. What are your hopes for the next decade?
That's a terrific question, and one that I wasn't prepared for. I would love to see a world emerge, and I think there's some possibilities for this, where there's not only multipolar, but very multipolar environment, that you have leadership perhaps by some of the more important countries, but that leadership gets extended to a broader array. And I think Saudi is a perfect example. This is a country that has the potential to play a major role in world affairs. And I would love to see a world with 15 centers of concentration of opportunity, so that you have the opportunity to generate some of the benefits that technology has brought to us across a much broader array of players. I've lived the large majority of my adult life outside of the US. I'm a very strong supporter of multipolar and sort of multifaceted worlds.
Jeffrey Smith, thank you.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure.
In these turbulent times, don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe to Thinkpod for more insight and analysis.